I always tell people there's only five simple concepts you have to understand for distance. Whether or not you agree on the outcome of those five is up to you. But number one, distance has increased over the long run, especially at the highest end of distance, about a yard a year. So from 1960 to 2040 yards, and from 2000 to 2023 at the same pace. Now, a yard a year is kind of like an eroding beach line. There's never a year where you go, oh my gosh, what happened? But over the course of 30, 40 years and 30 or 40 yards, it's quite a challenge. The second thing you have to understand, and this is just a fact, is the future is faster. If you go to a junior AM, if you go to the US AM, if you go to a Walker Cup, we test balls currently at 176 miles an hour coming off the face of a club. And that's not fast enough when you're talking about the highest level of the game. And so 176 has long been passed by the future of this game, the people that are going to be here in 5 and 10 and on top of this game for a long time. Third thing you have to understand is governance is hard. When we announced our changes for 2028 and 2030, about half my email said, I can't believe you're implementing that change. And about half my email said, I can't believe that's all the change you're implementing. And maybe sometimes that compromise is where we have to live in, which is people that really understand the game over the last 50 and 60 years are concerned about the next 50 or 60. They might be concerned about the next 5 years or 10 years, but if you're not concerned about the next 20 or 30 years, then you're just a kick the can down the road kind of individual and let them figure it out when we get there. And that's not where we are. Between the R&A and the USGA, we're unbiased. We're not connected to anybody. Nobody pays our bills. We don't have any ball and club contracts so that we can do what we think is right for the game. And in the end, we try our best to listen to the industry, which is the hard part. You really have to listen to everybody. And the outcome that we came to, which was an across-the-board change where we'll test the ball at a faster speed than we're testing it today. 20 years ago, we adjusted that speed to where it is today, and now 20 years later, we're adjusting that speed to more relevant. It'll have an impact at the highest level of the game, somewhere in the 10-yard range, for the average tour player, somewhere in the 3 to 5 range for the average male player. Virtually no change, no matter who we're talking about, from kind of 5-iron down. And I think for a lot of players, you simply won't see a change at all. If you're somebody that's struggling with distance today or having a hard time making it to the fairway in the first place, and you're using the right ball, odds are that ball is going to be the same ball available to you in 28 or 30, because about 30% of the golf ball models that have been approved by the USGA would still be approved in 2028. And so, yes, it's going to cause change. I'm not going to lie to you and say this doesn't cause some sort of turmoil we have to get through. But the alternative to a little bit of turmoil to work through over a couple of years, to essentially say to future generations of this game, just figure it out. You'll have to build 8,500-yard golf courses, and we'll have fewer golf courses in certain parts of the world that simply can't sustain at those levels. That would be us not doing our job. And so, yes, when you're in the governance business, it's hard. But the only thing worse than actually making real governance choices is not making them, and just simply wasn't willing to be the latter of those two.
Are you at a point, Michael, where the USGA and the R&A, do you have the ball, or are you still trying to decide the exact chemistry, the formula that you want?
That's a good question, Matt, and I think a good misnomer to clear up. We don't make product at the USGA, so we're not concocting a golf ball that we're going to give to manufacturers and say, this is it. We never have, and really, at least while I'm here, we never will. So we don't make golf clubs. We don't make but we set the standards by testing what they do make. So all that's changed is for manufacturers in the business, we've said, here's how we're going to test golf balls for conformance starting in 2028. And if your ball wants to be conforming, it's going to have to pass these criteria. Those criteria have been tweaked versus where they are today. By the way, we tweaked them in 1975, and we did it again in 2002, and now we're going to do it again in 2028. So that's not completely abnormal. But what I would tell you is, once we set the standard, once we say here's the yardstick by which you'll be tested, how different manufacturers get up to the edge of that yardstick will be different, as it is today. So some golf balls will have higher spin, some golf balls will have lower spin, different feels. They'll figure out how they want to get there on their own. And quite frankly, some manufacturers have multiple versions that can all achieve that. So yeah, we're not Major League Baseball. We're going to create a ball and say this is the official ball and everybody plays it. We simply set standards, as we do with wedges and with drivers and everything else. And then the manufacturers have the freedom to innovate within that space. What I would tell you, Matt, on your question is we're already receiving prototypes from manufacturers asking us to test against those. I don't think, and I don't think they think, those are finished prototypes. That's how the R&D process works. But I know that there are already manufacturers producing balls that they want us to evaluate relative to those new standards, which tells me that thousands of engineers are already off and running. And if I know anything about the golf business, I know that there'll be incredible innovation between now and 2028.
Was the mentality, Mike, that we wanted to stay sacrosanct with one set of rules for everybody? I mean, what I'm getting to there is when you guys first introduced the concept to us, the idea was that this isn't going to impact what you called the recreational golfer. It's about golf at an elite level. But now the proposal is, as I understand it, it's pretty much everybody. What happened with that divide there? How did we cross that bridge?
Yeah, I always talk about leading in a huddle, Matt, which is, we're going to try at the USGA and the R&A to lead in a huddle, which means we're going to try to bring the industry together in a huddle and have a conversation. Now, at the end of the day, somebody's got to be the coach and the quarterback and make the call. But when you lead in a huddle, you get a lot of feedback, and you have to decide if you're going to listen to that feedback or not. And we were pretty serious about a model local rule that could be implemented at kind of elite competition, U.S. amateurs, Walker Cups, tour events, et cetera, where ball speeds and elite performance is pretty high. And when we led in a huddle and we went out and said, here's what we're thinking, the feedback was I wouldn't say it was universal. We never really had everybody say the same thing on any of our proposals along the way. But it was pretty loud and strong. And I would say it was definitely in the majority of, please don't separate what's being played at the highest level of the game and what's being played at the recreational game. And I think even when the people were giving us that feedback, they realized, I remember saying to a couple of pretty high level stakeholders, you realize that if I listen to that feedback, I have to create a ball across the board. And if I create a ball across the board, I'm not going to go as far in terms of slowing a ball down or having a distance impact, because I'm not willing to have real impact to the recreational game. The impact we're talking about today on the recreational game will be as simple as picking up your white tees, walking up 6 yards, and putting them back down, and you're fine. But I think they knew that. I think they really believed in keeping the game away from a bifurcated role. So we I wouldn't say that we were all on board with that feedback. But if you're going to lead in the huddle and you're going to ask for feedback, then you're going to have to take it all in. And the number one piece of feedback we heard through this process was, no matter what you do, please try to keep the game unified under the same set of performance equipment rules. I don't know that we'll always be there, because at some point we might have to cross that bridge, but we believed we could make a meaningful difference over the long term of the game, and have almost zero impact for the overwhelming amount of amateurs in the game through this situation. So yeah, we had to show our cards through this process. And at one stage, and when we showed our hand, it was much more focused on a model local rule, or a ball really designed at one level that was going to be different than the average amateur ball. But we really got significant pushback on that, and quite frankly, and listened to that feedback and made a different decision because of that feedback.